This is Hexes and Soldiers, episode 11, and my name is Jason. Welcome back. I thank you for joining me in this ride, and hopefully, I will be able to take you guys a little further down the road with future episodes. I would like to say thank you to everyone who has subscribed and encourage anyone who hasn't to subscribe. Give some shout outs to the 1,300 member Advanced Squad Leader group on Facebook. Anybody that is interested in Advanced Squad Leader, I would recommend you join that group, as any question you have will be answered in the fullest by multiple people. You might get multiple answers, but I guarantee you will get an answer. And posted a little 2-minute clip of what I consider wargaming and religion, a little video, and you can find that on my channel. And had some of these guys take a look at it, as it focuses primarily on Advanced Squad Leader. And I appreciate all the responses. And anybody else who hasn't seen that, I'm kind of proud of this little thing. Give it a look. And the idea for this came from another video I saw regarding Tibetan monks and the way they create their sand mandalas. And a lot of the pictures I've seen with these guys hunched over the sand mandala with their little straws, uh, placing intricate lines of sand in order to create this elaborate pattern, reminds me so much of wargamers hunched over their maps with the little tweezers instead of straws, pushing counters across the board. So there's that. And then what's new? Well, the nerve center, or headquarters if you will, that was previously located in Colombia has been relocated to New Orleans as part of the Witness Protection Program. No, that's a joke. But no, I'm down here in New Orleans now, and specifically the University of New Orleans. Not sure how long I'll be here, indefinitely. But packed everything up in the car. I had the trunk full of games, the back seat full of games, in between the front seats full of games, and any room that was left over was filled with clothes and a couple other things. In fact, in order to get all these games here, I ditched a sleeping bag, let's see, some canned goods, even some beer. I know. Had to leave it behind though. I couldn't take everything, and games got priority. So now I know what it's like to be an astronaut, is riding in that car. I barely had room to sit in my seat, and that was it. I could not lift my arms. I could turn my head left and right, and I could grasp the steering wheel, and that was it. I'm sure a lot of people got a kick out of me going down the road. It's hard to believe I didn't get pulled over, if for nothing else, curiosity's sake. For if I was a cop, I would have thought, what in the hell is this person trying to do? And pulled them over, taken video footage of it, shared it with my friends. But that didn't happen, and I guess that's for the better, as I was able to get down here in about 9 hours. So, not a bad little drive, but I wouldn't want to do it every day. And as far as this new headquarters, very much like a broom closet up here on the third floor. We have a living room, a bathroom, and a bedroom. I've got all the games stuck. Believe it or not, I was able to fit all of them on this industrial strength shelving unit, and kind of hard to get at anything, as there are stacks and stacks and stacks that I have to dig through. Yet to set up a wargaming table, and that is either going to be the kitchen or the bedroom, and no matter where I put it, my esteemed associate is not going to appreciate it. So, but hey, it's a compromise, and I gave up a 2-story, 2-bedroom place, very spacious, to move down here, and she can give up some space of her own, right? Right. Also on the way here, I stopped one last time at the old game night in St. Louis, specifically near the Crestwood area. Um, Had a little $10 coupon and thought, well, I'll stop and pick something up. And there wasn't much in there I couldn't live without. In fact, what I ended up buying I could live without, but found a second edition ASL rulebook in the shrink, and the rules themselves were shrink wrapped, and then the binder itself is shrink wrapped again, so it's double shrink wrapped. And I thought that'd make a nice collector's item. Just hang on to that, maybe pass it on to a child someday, or sell it on eBay 20 years from now. See what I can get. And also noticed New Orleans looks somewhat eerily similar to Holland. If you look at maps of Holland with all the canals and waterways, New Orleans and Holland look eerily similar. Now, I doubt I'll find any similarities between New Orleans and Holland in mid August, as I am swimming through the air and feel like somebody has coated me with corn syrup. That's going to be lots of fun, but that's what they make air conditioning for, and I plan to never leave the house from May till about September. So there you go. And also, there's a World War II history museum here in downtown New Orleans, which I have been to, and it's my understanding that this is the end all be all of World War II history museums, and quite impressive. All the displays and items they have. Very nice to see that stuff firsthand, and the size and scope of it, and even touch it. This stuff isn't just pictures and books, it's real, it existed. And a museum is no better place to confirm that. So, anybody hasn't visited the World War II History Museum and is capable of doing so, or lives near enough they could make the drive on a Saturday or Sunday, I'd recommend that. And I think they also had some sort of war game convention, and I think it was Flames of War stuff, but hey, at least it's something. I don't even know that they do it anymore, but seems they had some sort of annual something going on, and hopefully that'll return at some point. Noticed on eBay, driving around there recklessly. No, I was very careful. Didn't buy anything, but notice a second edition Beyond Valor, and that's ASL stuff. But this is the one with the red barricades module included, which is super fantastic because then you don't have to buy this thing separate, which is what you usually have to do. Out of print, of course, like almost everything ASL wise. But notice the person selling this was Kurt Schilling. And for those of you that know Kurt Schilling, well, good for you. But those of you that don't, Kurt Schilling, baseball pitcher back in the day, I think for the Houston Astros, could be wrong, but owned a piece of the pie or something to that effect when it came to ASL. And he's selling this thing and says it must weigh around 90 pounds, and I should know as I helped create this beast. So I thought that's kind of cool. Mr. Schilling trying to clear some space in his house or get some extra scratch. Who knows? I don't know what that ended up going for. It's pretty high with a couple days to go, and I lost track of it. So, and then if you haven't noticed this war game article in the Washington Post, and that would be your January 10th issue by Jason Albert. A long and very thoughtful and in-depth article that focuses primarily on Mr. Volko Arunke of the Coin series, Andean Abyss, Labyrinth, and a number of other games, but focuses on him. Very cool article, and also a little factoid that I found in there was in 1980, more than 2 million war games were sold. That has to be a high watermark for the industry. I don't know what the numbers are these days. It would be interesting to compare. Certainly not that high. But wow, 2 million games, and it's not hard to see why there were tons of game companies pumping things out almost as fast as they can because this stuff was literally flying off the shelves. And then news and reviews, we've got, wouldn't you know, GMT has added a new game to their P500 list, and called Fields of Despair, France 1914 to 1918. And This would be a two-player hex-based strategic level block war game set on the Western Front of the First World War. Players take control of the Allies or Central Powers fighting the war on land, at sea, and in the air, which should be interesting, while making tough economic and technological decisions at home. Well, the last part isn't much like what I do from day to day, making tough economic, well, not so much technological decisions, but at home. Is there a resurgence of World War I going on or starting? Is it just me? I've noticed a couple of things, and I tend to recognize patterns. But the World War I thing seems to be rearing its head, and I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I guess it's a good thing. If you like stagnated warfare that has little to no mobility, now I'm going to irritate anybody that is into World War I and argue that and say there's all kinds of mobility. You're just not looking in the right places. Either way, there's that. And then High Flying Dice has what they are referring to as their professional editions of Test of Metal, which and Bloody Hell, which they say are three games in one package. Now I only see two listed, but these are battles from the Allied advance through the Lorraine towards the Reich in 44. And then, okay, Bloody Hell here it says two separate games, which can link into a campaign game. So any of you that are interested in that or been holding off, now is the time, because it looks like this is as good as it's going to get with that stuff. And then after action reports, I have nothing to report, sir. Being involved heavily with the move and the preparation that goes with any move, I haven't played a damn thing, and I plan to amend that very quickly. So probably by the next time you hear from me, I will have something to report. But as of now, nothing. And then I have this week for you a top 10 wargame maps list. And if you didn't realize it, if you're a wargamer, you're also a bit of a cartographer, because you're using maps and or you're admiring maps one way or another. This list focuses on just that. And I'll start at the bottom, and I'm not going to number these off. You guys keep track yourself. But I will start with Grossdeutschland 42, which is a tactical combat series by M&P. I'll start with that at the bottom, and if you haven't seen any of these, go to the Geek and take a look. And you can in fact do that and follow along. And then Cells, the Ardennes, December 23rd to the 27th, 1944, Battles of the Bulge, Volume 1. And by its title alone, I can only assume there will be more in the series. And the map, as I've mentioned in the past, for a small press game company, Ziploc edition game, you can't do any worse. In fact, this is pretty damn good. Cream of the crop, and kind of a winner effect to the map, but they spared no expense and or no time developing this map, so take a look at that as well. Triumph of Chaos, point to point map, and a lot of interesting things going on there. Your eyes will not get bored at any point at any time looking at this map. A very interesting map. Kudos to the doctor. And this would be the same guy that does the podcast Guns, Dice, and Butter, his love child. And I think he's got something on the grill as far as new game wise. I don't have a lot of info regarding him, but I do think he is working on something. Or I'm completely wrong, but he will have another game coming out at some point. And then after that, you've got Kampfgruppe Scherer, Shield of Cholm. Another game I've mentioned in the past. The map, again, a winter theme, but personally, I can't get enough of these as long as they're done well. If you just put a white tint over everything, that doesn't count. And this is yet another winterized map where they obviously took a lot of time in creating it. Nice thing to look at, ASL stuff. 1777, the year of the Hangman. Another fine map. ASL Festung Budapest, another ASL entry. This via direct route through M&P. And Festung Budapest, I initially had Bridge Too Far on here. And I had that on here because there's the historical comparison that's going on. They didn't just fling stuff on a map. They had to make sure this coincided with historical photos and things. Well, the same goes for Festung Budapest, but at a larger scale. So I gave it to that. Just a fantastic rendition, especially when you consider the comparison that goes on as far as matching this up to historical records. A real testament to what can be done with maps. And if you haven't seen that, again, take a look. Raid on Saint Nazaire, kind of a oldie but goodie Avalon Hill game. I think for its time, it was a hell of a thing, and even still, it's has staying power. This map, and kind of a colorful, nice-looking map. So take a look at that if you haven't. And then Panzer Grenadier Elsenborn Ridge. And for the love of God, I'm not an Avalanche Press fan. I don't own anything by them, but if I did, I might start with this and Elsenborn Ridge, Battle of the Bulge stuff. I'd have to get the winter maps though. So what they did is release this thing, and then later on came out with these winter maps for it, and these things are just, again, just beautiful. That leaves Napoleon's Triumph, which I originally had at the top of the list, but I bumped him, and you'll see why in a second. But Napoleon's Triumph is, as I've said in the past, not just a triumph in name, it is a triumph in originality and a triumph in design. Thank you, Mr. Bowen Simmons, for what you've done with this game and its sister game, and hopefully you can come out with some other ones in the future. I know he's had some trouble health-wise, but we'll see what happens with that. Devil's Cauldron, top of the list, number one, hands down, flat out. Way to go, Mr. Starkweather. Amen, hallelujah. This thing is, it sets the bar for what maps have to live up to, or don't have to, but then have to live in the shadow of this thing. As far as Market Garden goes, or almost any game, when you look at the historical comparison to the records, and I wouldn't be surprised if, I don't know, certain agencies in Holland have bought this game to use just for the maps, or even the CIA for that matter, purchased this game merely for the maps. They're that realistic and accurate. Of course, they'd be out of date, I guess, but my lord, if this is what can be done with wargame maps, and Mr. Starkweather proves this is what can be done, why aren't other people doing this? There's no reason for half-assed maps anymore. And thank you, Mr. Starkweather. So there's your top 10 wargame maps. And obviously there will be things that perhaps deserve to mention, and I did not mention them, so feel free to add them below this video, which nobody ever seems to add anything below these videos. That's fine, I understand. People are busy, they don't have time to fiddle around with things. I'm sure you guys barely have time to listen to these things, which I appreciate, much less interact with them, so just scratch that. And then honorable mention, we'll have Napoleon at the Berezina, and I believe Against the Odds magazine puts this out. This deals with Napoleon fighting a strategic withdrawal or retreat. You can quibble over terms, but Russians fast on their heels, and the Berezina, of course, this famous river that he had to cross with tons and tons of stragglers and just hanging on, following him, and a narrow escape there. But nice map. And Summer Storm, the Battle of Gettysburg, as well as War of the States, Gettysburg 1863 for any Gettysburg or Civil War fan for that matter. And I know of one in particular in France that might take a look at these, as he has purchased something from me on eBay, war game wise, and specifically the Civil War. Take a look at those, and then we'll leave it at that. So, for the meat of the matter, I had a number of choices here. Came close to doing something I scrapped a while back, and compiled something else ASL wise, and then compiled something else. So three different things. I tried to figure out how to work in together, or which one to do separate, or what. So what I've decided to do is focus on the Grossdeutschland unit, and that would be the German Grossdeutschland unit during World War II. And what I'll do is give you a history of the unit, and then depending on how much time I have left, we'll just go from there. But we'll start with the history. And a lot of people go nuts when you mention this unit because apparently this is the creme de la creme for the German army. And a lot of people go so far as to say that this unit is even better than any of the first three SS divisions, and you would be surprised or you wouldn't be surprised. Some of the heated debates that go on between people regarding things like this: who's better, why is this unit better, why is this unit not better, and just like I think if these people met in real life, they'd be drunk and fist fighting each other regarding this stuff. It's quite odd, but hey, people have a passion for things, and this stuff's no different. So this unit was arguably, and I stress that term arguably, the best unit within the German army. And they received equipment way before any other unit. Anything new or anything they needed, they got it. Not sure why that was. Hitler obviously, or somebody, had a fondness for this unit. But yeah, anything that they wanted or needed equipment wise, they were first on the list every time. And this unit began as a ceremonial guard unit in the 20s, and by the 30s grew into a regiment of the German army. And it wasn't until about 39 that the unit began to appear similar to what we've come to know as the Grossdeutschland unit, called Greater Germany in English, because unlike other units, this one drew their members from all over Germany, and other units would draw their adherents from specific regions, local regions, but this one was different. They would take volunteers from all over Germany, and its baptism of fire occurred in France in 1940 and were paired with Panzer Group 2 during the opening of the Barbarossa campaign, were nearly annihilated outside of Moscow in 41, and they had to form a newer regiment from a combination of the remnants of the old and new recruits. So on April 1st of 42, the regiment is formally declared a division, and that spring the regiment was relocated to Orel as motorized units were needed for the coming summer offensives. So post reorganization found the division with supporting units in the form of a panzer battalion, an assault gun battalion, and increased flak, artillery, and engineers, so they really got fleshed out. And I also got some Tiger tanks in May of 43. So the division was part of 48th Panzer Corps, which was part of 4th Panzer Army, commanded by Mr. Hermann Hoff, and was to play a major role alongside the 2nd SS Panzer Corps in Operation Citadel, the German offensive to sever the Kursk salient, penetrating into the southern shoulder. Just before Kursk, new Panther D tanks were acquired, but were plagued with engine fires and mechanical breakdowns. And it's my understanding that Hitler prolonged the start date for Kursk so he could get these new tanks, among other things. And I think they got rushed in production. And when he finally got them, yeah, like before any of them could even fire a shot, engine failures and things, and most of them just conked out on their own. So after Kursk, Grossdeutschland saw heavy fighting around Karachev, and for the rest of 43, Grossdeutschland is engaged in a fighting withdrawal from the eastern Ukraine, taking part in battles around Kharkov, Belgorod, and finally on the Dnieper. And in the year, fighting strong enemy forces near Mishrin Rosh, east of Krevoy Rosh. And it was during this time that the division earned its nickname Die Führerwehr, or the Fire Brigade. And the reason they were given this name is because they ran, allegedly, from crisis to crisis to quell the flames. And in 44, some of the division gets transferred to France for R&R, while the rest continues to hop from crisis to crisis on the Eastern Front. Part of the division saw action in the battles to relieve the Cherkasy Pocket in late January 44, while the rest of the division was involved in heavy fighting from the Dniester to the northern Bessarabia. And then on the 4th of March of 44, the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd Ukrainian fronts launched a major attack on the north, central, and southern flanks of Army Group South, and Grossdeutschland gets moved to Kirovgrad, bolstering weak parts of the line until withdrawn to Rovnoy to the southwest. And then on the 16th of March, the division begins to move to the Dniester River, and by the end of March has entered Romania. So the division fought defensive battles in the spring, and on May 2nd, a new Soviet offensive gets kicked off, and this is aimed at breaking through specifically Grossdeutschland and into the oil fields. So the defensive action at the Second Battle of Targu Frumos was the focus of several NATO studies during the Cold War. And in late July, the division gets moved to eastern Prussia, where it completes a successful counterattack on Vilkovishkin and the Baltic states, but in the process gets nearly wiped out, and during action at the Mabel bridgehead specifically. So in November of 44, Panzer Corps Grossdeutschland gets formed, and this is made up mostly of Grossdeutschland and the Brandenburg Division. By March of 45, 4,000 men are all that remain of Grossdeutschland, and this remainder escapes by ferry from the collapsing Mamel bridgehead. And they land at Palau and end up being thrown right back into the mix. So they hopped out of the frying pan into the fire with that one. And then some escaped to the British, but eventually most surrendered to the Russians, and then that's the end of that. So the unit was probably popularized or at least introduced to the mass general public via a book, that is to say the people in the West, by a book called The Forgotten Soldier. And if you haven't read this or been meaning to, you need to get a hopping on that, because hell of a book. And a lot of people knock this thing for its historical inaccuracies. That is not why you read this thing. You read scholarly work when it comes to that. But the guy who wrote it, his pseudonym is Guy, or Guy in French, Sager, Sajer. And he had served with the division. This gets published in France in 67 is its first edition. And then, as I said, it's frowned upon by historians for its flaws, but that's not why we're reading it. You're reading it for its stark portrayal, first-hand account of the horrors that are going on all throughout the Eastern Front. So there's your background to the Grossdeutschland unit, and a quick, brief one at that. I left out a lot of stuff, and anything detail or juicy wise, I just had to expunge for time purposes. But feel free to read up on your own regarding that unit, as it saw a long career throughout World War II and saw a lot of action. So why do I bring this up? Well, you might have already guessed. Because this unit in particular is portrayed in games. And there are people who say, why would you bother having this unit be reproduced in a game? You're a Nazi if you play it, or crap like that. Just get over it. People play this stuff because they like war games. They don't play this stuff because they want to be Nazis, okay? So that's just junk. But as far as the games go, the gamers have their tactical combat series that deals with this. And what they've done is looked at the Grossdeutschland division from 40 to 42, and for each year have put out a game regarding that. So the idea behind the series is to follow them through the entire war, with one game for each year of the war, featuring a significant battle from the unit's history. That said, there should be 3 more games in the pipeline. I have heard nothing regarding future games, but there are 3 more years to deal with, so I can only assume that there will be 3 more games. The first installment covers the battle for Stone, France in 40, and as is the case throughout the series, battles are depicted on historical representations of the terrain that was actually fought on. So these aren't just willy-nilly ad hoc hodgepodge maps thrown together. These are maps that somewhat depict the historical terrain that's fought on. The command and control rules really drive these games. You've got op sheets that each player draws up. Basically, you're delegating your course of action before you do it, and this brings out a kind of realism that goes into actual military planning. And you don't see this in too many games, but you see it here. And for solitaire play, how would you do that? Well, you simply come up with two or three plans for each side and then choose one randomly. So there are three historical scenarios in this edition and a campaign game that combines all three. This one's a duel between quantity, which the French fall into that category, versus quality, and the Germans, of course, fall under that category. Then you have the second game, Großdeutschland 41, basically your same game mechanics, but deals with the 22nd through the 25th of October, 1941, south of Tula, Russia, consisting of, I think, 5 scenarios. And then the third, which is the one I have, Großdeutschland 42, 25th of November 1942. As part of Operation Mars, the Soviet 238th Rifle Division, supported by tanks of the 49th Tank Brigade, attacked into the Luchesa Valley, trying to create a breach for the waiting 3rd Mechanized Corps to exploit. For reasons still unknown, right before the attack, the German Ninth Army ordered 3 battalions, the Großdeutschland Division, to move to the Luchesa Valley as OKH reserve, thus backing up the weak 216th Grenadier Regiment. Because of the presence of the Großdeutschland, the Soviets were unable to force a breakthrough and decided to commit the entire 3rd Mechanized Corps into the meat grinder to force the issue. So this game pits the Großdeutschland Division against the entire Soviet 3rd Mechanized Corps with, I think, something like more than 200 tanks over several days. And the designer, Wig Graves, has conducted extensive research regarding this game. And in the designer notes, he talks about the availability and vast amount of sources that he used regarding the design of this game, and combined both German and Soviet sources to create the order of battle. So nothing is lacking in that area. And then essentially you got the Soviets again have the quantitative advantage, while the Germans try to buy time for reinforcements to be rushed into any holes that open up. And it's, I think, very quickly on, the Germans learn how to fight with a lesser force against a greater force. This happens time and time and time again throughout the war, and they become damn good at it. Though primarily on the defensive, as the Germans would be from probably 41 on, other than Kursk. The Germans can benefit from counterattacking the relatively immobile Soviet units. The Soviets can't count on numbers alone, or they will repeat history with an entire mechanized corps wrecked. So the Tactical Combat series does an excellent job simulating this 6-day battle on 3 maps, allowing for plenty of opportunities for maneuver warfare through clever op sheets, as I mentioned, and misdirection. So players get a real feel for the strengths and weaknesses of both sides. Soviet formations are huge but rather inflexible and somewhat brittle. The Germans are too thin to hold the line and must use maneuver and counterattacks to keep the Soviets at bay. And because it occurs during winter, and this, I don't believe it is a winterized map, so this is not specifically why I chose this. But it does occur during winter. Daylight hours are few, and the campaign plays faster than you might suspect. So while the campaign game is the real gem, of course, there are also a number of one-map scenarios covering the initial assault that are great as standalone scenarios or as training for the campaign game, which can be started on your choice of 3 different dates. The German player will learn to love and cherish his few 88mm guns, while the Soviets will learn to pray for snow. And as stated in the designer notes in 42, 1942 is an important year as twice the Grossdeutschland division comes close to being destroyed. And interestingly, the Soviets here are attacking from the west and in an easterly direction. So at first glance, Soviet command rules may seem debilitating, but are intended to prevent the Soviets from making one giant push across the map. And the Germans are outnumbered as usual, but benefit from a more flexible command advantage. The Germans must stop the Soviet attack in the Luchesa Valley, while the Soviets must break through the German lines and cut the main Olenino-Smolensk road. And as far as this particular game goes, glance through the special rules, and you've got German Corps level pioneer and construction battalions did historically work throughout the battle to keep the main road clear of snow so supply lines could keep moving. And they're also ordered to protect the main road bridge across the Luchesa, were also available for action as needed. So within the game, these are represented, and movement restriction is placed on them, forcing them to remain within 20 hexes of entry area southeast until attacked. Then you have, let's see, German radio interception was going on all over the place, as the Soviets were just terrible at practicing radio discipline. The Germans were regularly able to intercept radio traffic, and as a result, when the Soviet player is filling out his op sheet to reflect this, he must inform the German player of any victory point village he plans to attack. So that's pretty cool there. And then finally, the designer includes very in-depth historical notes, which make for good reading, in addition to the design notes. And he goes in depth history-wise regarding the Spring Offensive, the Rzhev Salient, Operation Mars, and the Luchesa Valley. So lots of good stuff to read in addition to playing. And that's the Tactical Combat Series take on Grossdeutschland, but it doesn't end there. And the final entry deals with a game that had a lot of buzz around it when it came out. That has since died off for a number of reasons. But the game that I am referring to is Fighting Formations Grossdeutschland Motorized Infantry Division. The edition I have came out in 2011, GMT Games. And yeah, they did reprint this. I have the second printing. And the idea behind this for Mr. Chad Jensen, who is also the designer, I believe, of Combat Commander, was to come out with other famous infantry divisions in history and create a history/game specific thing regarding that. He has done nothing since this, and much speculation as to why that is. Again, people suspected that this particular game's focus on a solely German division caused problems with the public and decided to shy away. Well, that's got nothing to do with anything. Basically, from what I understand, Chad himself has stated that, oddly enough, he found tons, and I mean tons of information to focus on specific battles to design a game around regarding the Grossdeutschland. But when it comes to other famous infantry divisions, and when I say others, I mean American, English, for some reason he states that he has had a lot of trouble finding specific information regarding a particular battles that he could design a game around. I find that hard to believe, but I guess I got to take his word for it, as he's been doing the legwork regarding this stuff, and he said he is open to information contributions regarding things of that nature. But and GMT also has said that they're fans of the Fighting Formations game system and will gladly and readily print any other games that he comes up with, but that just hasn't been the case, and we're going on, let's see, second printing 2011, 3 or 4 years now, so we may not see anything. But, and as I said, he's also the designer of Combat Commander, unless I'm mistaken, and that stuff is loved and cherished by everyone, and I'm sure that takes up a lot of his time. He's also the designer of something else which I can't think of off the top of my head that is very, very active right now. But regarding this game, as usual, per GMT standard operating procedure, you have a very sturdy, tough box that if you're not careful, you could kill somebody with, and the box would still be fine. You got your deck of cards, which aren't hokey by any means. Doesn't look like anybody took photographs of models that somebody's sister did and put them on there. These are very respectable. Looks like actual photographs from the war. A big bag of dice, and there is a reason for this, as we shall see. You got a 6-sider, 8-sider, 12-sider, 20-sider, some cubes for your order matrix, which I'll do my best to explain. And as per every game that GMT produces, a bag o' baggies to keep your counters in, I presume. A very thick 64-page playbook with scenarios and sources and suggested reading for anybody interested in the subject. Your rule book, mine would be version 1.1, and 4 paper but glossy-ish maps. Very well done. And you have a couple player aids, your order matrix card with a time track, an initiative track, and 5 counter sheets. And these counters are not overly crowded with information. They're functional yet aesthetic. And some people have a problem with the side profile of the vehicles. I don't mind personally. A lot of people want a top-down view. But in my opinion, the side profile works just fine. And so yeah, the counters are decent. But regarding the mechanics of the game, you have an order matrix, and the order matrix dominating the center of the track display defines the capability of the players to perform the various orders, which are the basic actions of fighting formations throughout the game. Specifically, the matrix determines which orders are available to the players at any given moment via the position of allotted order cubes within its colored boxes. And if you look at your order matrix, you will see defined for you your order options, and there are 10 of them, numbered 1 through 10. These consist of asset, fire, move, rally, assault, advance, sniper, battalion support, regiment support, and division support. And it's my understanding that based on which one of these you use, you pay a cost for that order, which also coincides with movement of the initiative track. And when you spend enough of these orders, the initiative switches to the other player, at which point it becomes his turn. So I like that a lot. Then what else do you have? You have command markers, which are placed on the map, and each one exudes a particular command radius within which I'm going to assume units can be given orders. Your hit markers are structured somewhat similarly to Conflict of Heroes in that they are placed in an opaque cup and drawn randomly, so you never know exactly to what extent the damages you will be doing, and I like that a lot. As well, you have, as I mentioned, a ton of dice, and there's a reason for that. That reason being, when you attack, you start with a base 2 die 10, and this can be modified either up or down, so you can go from a 2 die 10 to a 2 die 12, and from a 2 die 12 to a 2 die 20. Conversely, you can go from a 2 die 10 to a 2 die 8, and a 2 die 8 to a 2 die 6, and anything below that is listed as an auto miss. And as far as modifiers regarding this, you're looking at -1 die if the firing unit is currently activated for an assault order, -1 die if the unit is firing at greater than its printed range, but less than or equal to twice that range, or long range. -2 die if the unit is firing at more than double its printed range, but less than or equal to 3 times that range, otherwise known as extreme range. And then you have +1 die if the unit is firing into an adjacent hex, otherwise known as short range. -2 die if the firing unit is a gun or vehicle that during targeting pivoted in order to bring the target hex within its front fire arc. And finally, -1 die if the firing unit is a gun or a vehicle with a loose fire arc that is firing into a hex within its flank fire arc. So there's that. And I'm sure firing through obstructions such as woods and things further modify stuff. You've got your melee, your return, fire, rate of fire, movement, all your standard stuff. But the order matrix and initiative track in conjunction with the attack dice are, in my opinion, well, as well as the command markers, are the real innovations when it comes to this game. And they work, in my opinion, fluidly and flawlessly once fully grasped. So, that is the game, and oddly, there are no historical notes, no design notes, and it pains me that that is the case. Nevertheless, we just have to live with it. So there you go, Fighting Formations, Großdeutschland Motorized Infantry Division by game designer Chad Jensen from GMT. If you think you might be interested in this, I'll just go ahead and tell you that you are, and pick it up and play it and love it. So that's that. For this episode, we focused on the Großdeutschland division and in history as well as games, and I did a top 10 list of game maps, and I think that's plenty for now. Regarding the next episode, which will be, and I have to admit, I'm quite excited about this, episode 12. 12 episodes, and I plan to do something special. I don't know what yet, but I plan to do something pretty elaborate, pretty extravagant for you guys, so definitely check back in a week or two and try and catch that. So that's it for this, and thanks for listening, and keep gaming. Oh, for